Hi Asa. So glad you could join. Hi Lorna. Prompt as usual. Glad you can be here. And Geeta has joined. Welcome Geeta. Just gonna give it a few more minutes till about 5 past to let a few more people join. In the meantime, I have a cup of tea ready. So if you guys wanna get something to drink, it's not as hot as it was yesterday, which is good, I suppose. Oops. Okay, so this is the final of the South Asian Heritage Month UK series that we've been exploring. We've been in discussion with people from various backgrounds, food, art, academia, language. And so Geeta will be closing this session for us, and we'll be talking about, so this is part of the culinary segment, but we'll be talking about gender in the kitchen, intergenerational connections. And then tomorrow, from the 13th to the 17th onwards, we will be exploring a series called Sarhad Par, or Beyond the Border, and that is commemorating the partition of India, 1947. So I hope that you can all join for that discussion as well. Give it 2 more minutes. I'd like to give enough people time to join. And as always, I will disable the comments from my point of view, from my side. And that's just to allow Geeta and myself to have a conversation without distractions. That's the format that I've been doing across the month, actually, since the 18th of July. I've been doing this, and it's been really, really fun. Really enjoyed all the dialogues that we've had, the various different dialogues with so many different people, and the discussions we've had, the stories we've shared. It's really been wonderful, actually. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Geeta, who's a wealth of knowledge on so many different things. I will go into that in a moment. But yeah, this is the last of the South Asian Heritage Month UK before we start focusing on the partition of India from tomorrow until Monday. And as I said, the format, so I will be disabling the comments, but you will still be able to give your feedback throughout. So if there's something that Geeta says or I say that resonates with you, we urge you to engage through the hearts or through the comments, and then I'll turn them on at the end. So last 15 minutes or so I usually turn them on, and that gives you guys the chance to ask any questions that you have or just give any feedback. So essentially the conversation is about 45 minutes long. So 1 more minute. People normally join halfway through, so okay, let's disable the comments now. It's 8:05 on my side. So without further ado, let me introduce Geeta Ludhra of Dadimas. For those that don't know, Geeta has a very big, in my opinion, a very big presence on social media, specifically I think in the sort of Punjabi community. I know that she has a wider audience as well that's not Punjabi, but I know that she has a lot of admirers from our community and a good network, let's say, from our community. So those that are not familiar with who Geeta Ludhra is, she's the co-founder of Dadimas CIC, which is a social enterprise non-profit brand. She is a mother to 2 grown-up daughters and has a professional background in education and university lecturing. She has taught in various West London primary schools and lectures at Brunel University, where she trains PGCE student teachers, works on the MA programme and across West London schools. She is an active governor in 2 schools and enjoys heritage cooking and baking. And she loves old school recipes in particular. She also enjoys community work, running her writing club on Educating Geeta, which is a separate page. We will be discussing that shortly. And Geeta also enjoys nature walks. Geeta completed her PhD in 2015 alongside a full-time job in academia. Her PhD research was a feminist study exploring the success narratives of South Asian secondary school girls. I'll say that again. Her PhD research was a feminist study exploring the success narratives of South Asian secondary school girls. She has published from this and is currently working on developing a book from this. Geeta is passionate about women's studies work, community work, and connecting generations through heritage food stories and ancestral wisdom. So, I will invite Geeta to join. From the Dadimas page, here we are. Hi Geeta.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Right?
Yes.
Have you got yourself a drink? I've got myself some masala jar.
I've got strawberry water.
I wasn't sure because it was raining earlier. I felt like masala jar. It was raining here in West London. But yes, glad that you've got a drink to keep yourself hydrated. And welcome, Geeta. So as I mentioned, this is the finale in the South Asian Heritage Month series we've been exploring before we go on to the partition of India from tomorrow. So really glad that we'll be having this conversation with you. There's so much to say. I mean, I could talk about this and about what you do for more than an hour, but we'll get into that now. The structure I normally do is, as you're aware, because you've joined a lot of these, and that's something I want to point out. Geeta is such a great cheerleader for everyone, regardless of age or gender. I've seen that firsthand. She really does actively support everybody who she feels is making an impact, and she has supported my sister and I. So grateful for that, Geeta, and I hope that through this conversation, people have a better idea of what you are and what you do. That bio there wasn't enough to explain everything, but let's get into it and hopefully people can get an insight themselves. So, fun and games to start off with, rapid fire round. The first dish that you learned to make?
Aloo gobi. That's easy.
Oh, okay. How old were you when you made that?
I was probably it was after primary school. My dad taught me after a trip to the pub.
Okay. That's not usually the order that people learn to make aloo gobi. Oh, I think we've lost Geeta. I think we lost you there, Geeta, for a second.
Okay, yeah, it was aloo gobi, and I probably learned aloo gobi about the age of 11 or 12, and my dad taught me.
Okay, you said after you went to the pub.
Not me, my dad.
Okay, so that's why I needed you to clarify, because I didn't hear that. The bandwidth was
yeah. No.
So it's a bit out of focus.
Let me go to it. Is it out of focus? Let me go to another. Let me go.
I want to make sure we get a good conversation with you.
Let me try going. For some reason, it's very blurred, or I've got a rubbish camera. I'm going into another room.
Okay. Well, we will continue as you migrate.
Yeah, keep talking as I'm walking with my strawberry water.
So a dish or recipe that reminds you of your childhood.
It has to be saag, a big patila of saag.
Oh, okay. I think that's for a lot of people as well. Is that something that you had frequently as a kid, or is that in sardiyan that you had fond memories of sardiyan or the winter time?
Yeah, it was. It was soon, yeah, during the Sardiya it was. And my mum she's still got the huge patila that she used to make saag in. And when she was making saag, my dad would phone the neighbors and say, Aj kamlani saag banaya, aaj yo shamnu. So come
Oh,
over tonight because my wife's
yeah.
making saag. So before
Oh,
the patila was even cooked, it had already been accounted for.
because the patilla has come out of the cupboard, so they know what is going to be made. You know, I
Yeah,
had something similar. My mum had this particular patilla or pan for making aloo gobi in, and
yeah.
only aloo gobi. I don't know why. And we knew when that was out, ready to be washed, that that's what we're having for dinner tonight. Anyway, moving on. You're hosting a dinner party, which I'm sure you've done lots of.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
three people, living or dead, would you invite?
It would probably be, one of them would be my Dhadi, my late Dhadi, just to show her my culinary skills at this stage in my life. I think she'd be
Yeah,
really proud.
yeah.
Another person would be my late mama, who passed away very young, but really, really enjoyed nice food. So they're
Mm-hmm.
two people. And the third person would probably be, oh, I think Imran Khan, because I had a big crush on him as a child.
We're talking about the now Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. Yes, the former cricket player.
Yeah.
Okay, that interesting table. I like that you said your Dadima, and we will, it's apt that you said your Dadima because obviously the brand Dadima, which we will get into. Um, okay, so since we're celebrating South Asian Heritage Month and shared heritage, what is a British Asian recipe specific to your family? Something you might have created, or your mum or dad, or nani nana dadi dada might have made.
Particular to our family. Let me think. Gosh, there's so many recipes. I think it would probably, oh, our curry is quite famous because whenever I go home to Nottingham, all the relatives always say that our curry is very, very good. So it's probably Punjabi curry with traditional pakore. And
And
I know Lorna makes a mean Punjabi curry as well. So Lorna and I will have to do a kind of cook off one day on that.
yes, your own family cooking showdown.
Yeah.
What about cheesy cheese pakore? Because that is in Dadima's cookbook, isn't it?
Ah, yeah. Now, cheesy cheese pakore were usually made on the weekend, and a lot of
Good.
the children liked them. It was just really simple. You didn't have to do the whole cutting of lots of vegetables. It was like cheese
Mm.
on toast, but deep fried, and
Oh,
everybody
I
loved
think
them.
that sounds really bad, but really good.
Yeah,
I'll have to try that. You have to make that for us, Geeta.
I will.
Okay. So since it was raining here today, it made me, I didn't have this question planned, but it started raining and then suddenly this thought came into my head. A food or drink that you associate with the monsoon season.
Oh, pakore has to be pakore and masala tea with one tukri of white budvi.
Oh, okay, that's really specific. So definitely masala John. That's what I said. As it was raining, I decided to make myself a cup of tea.
Yeah,
And pakora are a must in the monsoon season. I threw that question in there as it was raining, so thank you for
yeah.
answering that. And they're my favorites as well when it's raining. What would you consider the most important Indian spices for your cooking? For
Probably has to
Geeta?
be definitely has to be cumin seeds.
Love
I
jeera.
toss, yeah, jeera has to be one. And I'm really, really fussy on my jeera. So even if it's ground jeera that I use, it has to be dry roasted in the pan and then freshly blended in the spice grinder. The other one is probably gali mirch, black pepper. And again,
Mhm.
that has to be freshly ground in the spice mixer, spice blender. My mother-in-law uses a lot of gali mirch as opposed to garam masala. Um,
Oh, I wonder what
because
that tastes like.
it gives a lot of heat to the food, and sometimes we can mistake the heat for the spice. But
Yeah.
she tends to use, so when I got married, I tended to use more garam masala. And what I noticed is that she used very little garam masala and more kali mirch in her food, but she'd still use a bit of garam masala. And garam masala probably has to be one as well, but it has
It's
to be
interesting.
homemade.
In the Dadimas book, which we will be speaking about just after this, I noticed a lot of the recipes had black pepper in it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you've explained now why that is, and that's something I'm not used to seeing in Indian cooking. Garam masala is what we use, so I found that quite interesting. So I'm glad that you mentioned that now, because that sort of explains it all.
Yeah.
Um, and final question, a rapid fire round. What is the secret to cooking like a dadima?
I think it has to be the tarka.
The
It has
magical
to be
tarka.
the tarka. The tarka is the make or break of a dish. I mean, there's so many other things like patience, the holistic skills that go along with cooking well. But I think the tarka is the make or break. And
Mm,
what
it
Annie
is.
and I, it is the make or break of a dish. And my dad used to say that actually. That's one of the things, not just the Dadima, but my dad used to teach me.
I mean, I don't know why I was expecting you to say love, but I'm glad that you said something different that I wasn't expecting you to say. And
Yeah, I
tarka is
think
something
you'd have expected me to say love.
I
So
did.
that's,
So
yeah.
I'm glad that you didn't say that. Okay, thank you, Geeta, for the rapid fire round questions. So let's move on now to discussing the Dadima's book. We're briefly going to talk about the Dadima's
Yeah.
cookbook. So this is your daughter Annie on the front cover, and it says, I know it's back to front, but it says celebrating grandmother's wisdom through Indian cooking. So this is a book that Geeta's daughter Annie semi self-published, and in this book she draws on her own Punjabi heritage to bring together dishes from Indian grandparents, hence the name Dadimas here. And the book is full of, culinary wisdom, but also wisdom that extends beyond the kitchen as well. And what I really liked about this book is, um, in I suppose any cooking, you could be given the same ingredients, but everyone's going to make their own interpretation of that dish, and that really comes across clearly in this book. And I've said to Geeta a few times that I've made dal from this book, even though my mum's taught me dal. Even the masala tea I'm having now is your recipe, and I wanted to try and see what. I don't have my own grandparents, and that's what really drew me to this book. When I first came across on Instagram, I thought, well, what does my grandparents' cooking, what would it have tasted like? What would my nanny's or daddy's food been tasted like? And I don't have, I mean, I suppose my mum is the link, but there was something about this book that appealed to me, and I wanted to recreate these recipes, and I often do go to this book. As I mentioned, cheesy cheese pakoras as well. I haven't made that yet, but if you could talk about this book, Geeta, the
Yeah.
inspiration very briefly, and the legacy of what it says here, celebrating grandmother's wisdom through
Yeah, so
food.
the idea for the book, so Annie, my oldest daughter, was raised in the extended family. So we lived together with my brother-in-laws, my mother-in-laws, and so she lived, her first 5 years was spent there in the extended family, and her grandmother was like a second mother to her.
Mm.
And even when we moved out of the family home, we still spent a lot of time there. It was on Annie's 18th birthday when we were in Spain, and Annie's passion is Spanish. So we went there. So we tried to go to Spanish-speaking countries. We were sitting by the poolside and just talking about aspirations, what we'd like to do in the future. And Annie was talking about her grandmother and saying, as Dhadi gets older, have we kept her stories alive and stuff? And so as a family, the idea was just born around a poolside. And then my husband said, why don't you go and get your notebook? And one of her 18th birthday gifts was a yellow ideas notebook. So she went to her room, hotel room, got the notebook. So all the ideas were crafted around a swimming pool in a hotel in Spain.
How amazing is that? I know that Annie's passion is Spain, and she did a degree in Spanish, didn't she? And she went to
Yeah.
Spain. She lived there as well. And I know that she said that when she's cooking, sometimes she likes to listen to Spanish reggaeton. So that's interesting that this book was, there's no real link there between Spain, really, if you think about it. But how being, I suppose, doing something that you're passionate about, or being in a place that you're passionate about, and how that can spark creativity. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and what Nuri I've just thought about is when Annie was studying in Spain, in Madrid, one of the ways she used to earn some pocket money is she would teach the local waiters and waitresses English through doing supper clubs in her flat. So her and her best friend would offer, they'd say, oh, we really like, you know, your English, the way you speak. So she would like make really simple dishes from her Dhadi, because her suitcase would be full of spices and things that I would, as a typical Desi mum, pack in her suitcase. So she would do little cooking sessions, which they'd pay her for, and then they could eat it after.
That's so wonderful. And I like that, you know, you said she was 18. That's quite young if you think about, she wanted to preserve, she was thinking about how can she immortalize the recipes of her grandmothers, right? And I've met Annie as well, and I feel like she's like me in the sense that she's an old soul.
She is an old soul.
Yeah, she's really wonderful. And I read this book as soon as I ordered it, and you know this, I messaged both you and Annie, and I said I read it in one sitting, and it made me so hungry and thirsty that I got up and made masala cha from this recipe, which I often still do. So thank you guys, both of you and your family, whoever, you know, helped to spawn this idea, and you know, just encourage Annie to you know, put this into the form of a book. Really wonderful book. Is it available to still purchase?
There aren't many copies left. There are probably 20 copies left, and we don't really market it, to be honest. So yeah, there's just a few copies left, but like I said, we don't market them because there won't be another print run now.
Okay, well, so in that case, I guess I'm very blessed to have this on my yeah. So let's move on to Dadimas. That's the name of the book, but also the name of your social enterprise brand. If you can, Geeta, explain what a social enterprise brand is, and obviously what you do with that brand online, Dadimas.
Okay, so it's a social enterprise brand, and it's not for profit. And obviously we do our paid work as well alongside, so it's not something we do full time, but it's more about preserving the heritage wisdom of our elders and trying to bring generations together. So the brand isn't just about celebrating our elders, because you know, there are times where we're blogging from young people as well, which is something we're really keen on doing. So for example, one of the contestants from Junior Bake Off, Karina, who's a baker, who's 13 now, you know, I got her to blog her grandmother's, her Dhadi, who lives with her mutri recipe. So, and she's going to be blogging, for example, a burfi recipe that she makes for her grandfather. So she's probably, we've got people like her, we've got the young chefs from the cooking classes, which we're not doing at the moment, obviously, because of COVID, but it's about intergenerational. And the way we see intergenerational, it's not just top down. And as a lot of people will appreciate, that our grandparents or our elders don't always get it right in speech marks, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but you know, we can have a difference in opinions, a difference in values, so we see it as reciprocal. So they pass their wisdom down to us, but there's also a push up in that as well. So it's reciprocal teaching and learning almost.
Yeah, I'm so glad you highlighted that, because there, like you said, there is a world of wisdom we can gain from them, but equally they can gain from us as well. So, and this idea of interconnecting generations, I just want you to explore that a little bit more. So clearly there's an emphasis on the elder generation through cooking, but also there's Dadima's brand actions, which is, you know, I'll let you elaborate on that actually.
Yeah, so the Grand Actions campaign was about doing community things to raise awareness, and one of them, for example, really simple, was local Sunday morning walks in Windsor, and that's not too far from us. And I don't know if you've ever walked along the Windsor Long Walk, where the castle is. Oh gosh, right, we've got
I've
to go.
never even been inside Windsor Castle, but we'll do that after COVID.
Okay, we'll do that. But that's on Sunday mornings. I'll have to restart that soon. Sunday mornings, 9 o'clock, and we just walk up and down the Long Walk, which is about 5 kilometres, 5.5 kilometres. And it's really nice, just walk and talk. We've had a group of grandfathers who came just before COVID. We had about 10 grandfathers who were a walking group, and they'd found us on Facebook. So they came along, and that was really nice. It was just me, a group of grandfathers, and Annie. I had a grandmother who came once, and she was, you know, she told some wonderful stories, and on the hill on the way up, she said, let's run backwards on the way up. So she was actually geeing me on, which was really
Oh,
nice.
you know, this, I really wanted you to talk about this Dadimas Grand Actions, and it's about fostering community links, essentially, right?
It is. Yeah, and when we did the very first one, the weather was quite nice. I actually got my mother-in-law to walk half of it, and my mother-in-law has a walking stick. She really struggles with walking because she's had a foot operation and stuff. But my mother-in-law actually kind of launched the first one, which was really special. She struggled, but she kept on going. And so we bought samosa, we took picnic blankets. And so on our walk back, I said, everybody gets samosa, samosa and sweets on the grass.
Oh, that is such a, that's
So
a really nice way to inaugurate it, you know?
we had a huge box of samosa, and even people who were passing by, because we had so many people who were passing by were looking and saying, what do you know, what are you doing? And so we were offering samosa out as well.
Food is a great way to connect people, you know? I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure that was, you know, very successful for you. I was watching, keeping an eye on that just before COVID, and I remember reaching out to you saying, oh, I would love to join this. And I've reiterated this quite often on our page, that we don't have any grandparents, and that's why initiatives like these really, they really speak out to us, you know. And I would love to join this walk whenever you start it up again. But I
Yeah.
also wanted to talk about something else, Geeta. School projects. So there's something,
Oh, yeah.
Foodie Fridays. So again, with, you know, keeping with this theme of fostering community links, and I found this really beautiful when you shared this with me. I don't remember having an experience like this at school, but if you could let everyone know what Foodie Fridays is. Again, it's part of the Dadimas Grand Actions to build
Yeah.
links.
So obviously I've got a background in school, and I've taught in schools, and I lecture teachers. So I do have a good network of schools. So I basically, with Annie's physical support as well, the two of us went into schools for a term on a Friday, and we encouraged either grandparents, or if children didn't have grandparents, it could have been their aunt or somebody who's like a grandparent, every Friday afternoon to bring in a dish from their culture. Okay, and I just want to make the distinction here between culture and religion. They're two very different things. And I know that you and I have had this discussion before. It's not something I'm going to elaborate on now here, because it was part of my doctorate, and I don't want to bore the pants off people, but it was from their cultural background. So for example, there was one mother who brought in a big pot of khichdi. There was another Armenian family who brought in, it was the grandmother and great-grandmother who brought in a big pot of Armenian rice. Somebody else, there was a Czech grandmother who brought in Czech apple strudel.
Ooh,
and then we
nice.
had a grandmother from the war who brought in rock cakes, and she taught the children about humble ingredients and how rock cakes were a really simple, frugal recipe. And she taught the children about that. You know, we made rotis on one of them. So there were lots and lots of dishes from across the world. But what we had were elders who came in to talk about them and why they were important. And then the children could ask questions. And then we had a food tasting after. So the tables were set out. And then we called parents in for the food tasting part. And the head teacher was just so lovely, because for a lot of the children in this school, these were very, very new tastes. It was quite an underprivileged school in terms of socioeconomic status, the school. And for many of them, you know, they were apprehensive of tasting some of these dishes. But, you know, we made it very clear, if you don't like the food, you don't have to eat it, just put it on the side in a bowl. And then they could make comments on it on Post-its, which we kept. And then the head teacher, myself and Annie, analysed the children's feedback and the parents' feedback.
How wonderful. I mean, what was the feedback from the grandparents and from the children?
They were really positive, but very, very honest. So if the children didn't like something, you know, they'd make, you know, maybe a face where they were frowning, or, you know, like that or something. So yeah, children, some children just drew a face. And we had teaching assistants involved in it, you know, some of the parents. And it was lovely, because some parents emailed the head after to say, where can we buy chapati flour from? Because we can't, you know, Where do you get it from? So it was a lovely conversation because the children wanted to engage in it. And that's one of the things the head teacher told us at the beginning of the project, that a lot of these children are not used to having a wide palette or, you know, broad tastes. So he was very, very keen to do that, but do it with parents and children.
I mean, in terms of the elder community, the grandparents or people who are like grandparents, then how did they feel about that, connecting with the children? And how did the children respond to those grandparents? Did they walk away with appreciation?
Yeah,
Or
the children really did. The children did, but also we were there as facilitators as well. So, for example, we had an elderly group. There was about 5 or 6 elderly people who came from the local old age people's home, and they came in with their carers, but I was facilitating and helping them. And so they did a Q&A with them about food during the war. So it was
so lovely.
the children, it was just so respectful, and the staff were humbled. You know, I think we had the radio in once who came in because they were really interested, but yet it really did attract a lot of attention, and other schools then became interested.
It's not something, as I said, Geeta, it's not something that I had an experience of at school. I won't go into the details of it now, but we just had for RE, the teachers asked the parents, my mum was one of them, to come in and make a dish associated with the faith, which, again, like you mentioned, the line between faith and culture can get blurred sometimes. But that was it. That was literally the experience. But this, connecting the grandparents or the elder community, you know, I just want to share a story. It's a folk story, Punjabi folk story. I think it's Punjabi. If not, I will say Indian folk story. Okay. Because I'm not quite sure now. But it's of Shravan Kumar. You might be aware of him.
Yeah.
Sarvan Putter. And this is a really famous story in India. And I was told this story when I was young. And the essence of this story is essentially respecting your elders. And that's what, you know, with all the endeavors that you do, whether they're online or offline, that's what comes to mind for me. Respecting your elders. And the story of Shravan Kumar, he's a young boy. His parents are, they're elderly, they're not well. I think they're blind also. So he carries them on his back. They're in baskets. He carries them on baskets across his shoulders, and he takes them. They're quite. I think they're devotees of a particular god that I can't remember now. So he takes them to the temples of this god, pilgrimages. He takes them across India on his back, and it's like I said, that story is supposed to. People across India know this story, and it's just supposed to remind you to take care of your elders, respect your elders. And like I said, that's what comes to mind with all the work that you do. And this is a very key theme, respecting the elder community in the South Asian world, right?
It is,
any culture, but particularly in this one, like I said, with this story, it is quite an important thing. Like you said, when you sit with a grandparent, connect with them, not only through their food stories and the culinary wisdom, but that's just a mode to open up the other conversations. Food is just that medium through which you can have other conversations with them. And I really respect you for that, Geeta, that you do that. It's the elder community these days are a marginalized, invisible community. And I think you're doing such great efforts to put the spotlight on them and celebrate them. And put them in, put them on a pedestal. They are heroes, aren't they?
Oh, thank you for that, Nuri. They are, and I do think in that word invisible, it's we talk about so many communities being silenced or invisible, and what I have definitely learned to appreciate more as I'm getting older is that if we don't appreciate now and make time to listen, their stories are going to fade. And they actually, many of them want to tell their stories and they want to be listened to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you've done. This is just one of your many endeavors, this book. And the grand actions, even the word grand action speaks volumes. That,
even if it's just walking with them, making them feel important. They once were, and as people get older, we forget about them. We just think, oh, they're senile, they don't know. And sometimes, yeah, it can be challenging looking after, we've had conversations about this, looking after someone who's older, but ultimately they are living libraries, so much to offer. And, I just want to say thank you on behalf of Sukhman, and I think a lot of people for the work that you're doing. I'm sure it's very tiring work, it's very mentally exhausting work, but important work. And I'm someone, I'm young, I'm 32, I feel young, and I am drawn to the work that you're doing. And like I said, I don't have any grandparents of my own, but I feel connected to them through all the work that you do. So thank you for that, Geeta. I want to move on to, just looking at the time, I want to move on to your PhD from Brunel University, and your research, I'm just going to highlight it again, a Black feminist study of academically successful British South Asian girls. So what was the impetus to explore this area, and why are you interested in women's stories particularly, and ethnic minority voices?
I think, well, I write in my PhD in the inspiration section that it's very much it's rooted in my own story as well. I was from a very working class background in Nottingham. I probably went to one of the worst, I think it was at the bottom of the league tables, the school that I went to. It was kind of known for glue sniffing and all sorts. So, terrible results. And I remember, I think when I got married, my husband looked at the charts and he said, "Oh, is that the school you went to?" I said, "Yep, it is." But I've done okay. So
You've done
it was
more than okay.
Yeah, so it was rooted in my upbringing, and it's how I was almost, I don't want to put myself down because I've learned not to over the years, but it's kind of a poor girl made good. So it's the girl from next door who kind of made it. And sometimes I always used to root it in luck and think, was I just lucky, or was it just that God did it? But rather than looking at it from my efforts. But I think it's that mantra as well from, your parents, that even though they were so busy working, and my parents did very long shifts in factories to make sure that they could bring the money home, but their mantra was, "Paro, paro, paro."
Yeah.
Study, study, study. And I'm not saying that's the right mantra always, but it was very much, we do not want you to end up working in factories like us. Just get your education, it's a ticket out. But what happened at 18 and a half, I got introduced to a boy through an introduced marriage. My husband of 31 years now, I had an introduced marriage. I'd just got a place at Birmingham University and Manchester University at the time to study. And at the time, my dad said, "You can study anytime if you find the right man who will enable you, but it's very, very difficult to find the right man these days." And that was 31 years ago. And I said, well, I did kind of say to my dad, "Dad, there's a lot of men out there. It can't be that difficult." And he said, "Well, it is. It's difficult to find the right man. And I've done my research. This is a good guy." So anyway, I kind of drifted into marriage, if I'm being honest, But I talked to my husband at the time, or fiance, that I'm very passionate about studying. And he said, "I really like you. If you marry me, I promise that you will go back to studying." So it was after I had my children.
Emotional.
Yeah, after I had both the girls, and I started researching, courses and things like that. I was in a pretty dead-end admin job, which I didn't really enjoy. I was paid peanuts for it. And then I got a teaching assistant job in the local school. And when my contract was going to be renewed, the head teacher said, "You've got brilliant grades at A level. You could have gone to university." I said, "I know, but I got married. This happened." And she said, "I could renew your contract, or I could encourage you to apply for your degree now." And so she was kind of the right person at the right time. So I applied, and then it just never stopped. I was so passionate about books, like maybe some people are about going shopping or buying handbags or other things. And my pleasure is books. And I became addicted to books, to the point where they would go in suitcases on holidays. I was addicted to books.
Well, that worked out for you, Geeta. And you're still in the sort of educational field, and you're doing, you know, you're doing that as your full-time job and managing Dadimas as well, which when you have a website or a blog can also be a full-time job, as you know, as I know. And you know, I think you're a really great mentor. I don't know what you're like with the PGCE students, but I'm sure you're great with them, because you know you are very supportive and encouraging for me, and like I mentioned in the bio and introduction, to a lot of other people. And you're always the first person that is cheerleading other people, and I think that comes, like you said, from rooted in your own personal experience of.
Well, I know there weren't always people there for me, but the very few people, I never ever forget anybody who was there for me on the journey. I don't want to call it a journey up necessarily, because the journey up always implies that it's a good journey, and it isn't. And that's one of the things that I explore in my doctorate, and I'm hoping to explore in my follow-up research, that in becoming successful, in inverted commas, it's not always a happy journey. It can be quite a lonely space as well. So that process of transformation and growing exposes your vulnerabilities. It can be quite lonely because there are people who will move away. So yeah, that journey can be very challenging and difficult. And in terms of mentoring, so I've mentored 16 years of students who are teachers. And if you think about it, on average, the course size is 160. So that's 160 times 16 years of students who have then gone on to teach children.
Yeah.
I am cheerleaders, particularly of younger women like you, your sister, girls like my daughter, because I've seen as well for Annie, my daughter, when she suffered from anxiety for a little while, and you know, she's a high achiever, and being a high achiever carries its own baggage as well when you're an overthinker. But I am a cheerleader for young women, because although the older generation may think you've got it easier, through my research, one of the things that I have realised and come to see through analysing the narratives of young women are the mental health issues that are at play, and all the other expectations on social media and other platforms for them to perform so highly.
This is part and parcel of being British Asian. You know, this is something, like you said, like my mum, for example, born in India, came here when she was 15. She had her own struggles, her own story. I can't relate to that, and nor can she relate to ours of living in two worlds, you know, British Asian worlds. But thank you for sharing that, Geeta. I want to move on to a final question before we allow other people to give comments and questions. And it's linked, you know, with the PhD about feminist study. And this word feminist I want to look at very briefly as well. So, like, you know, there's a few key things you highlighted there. And I want to move on to the kitchen. And we had a conversation, and you said that people have identities and spaces have identities, right? As much as people do. So with that in mind, and the fact that there's a lot of discourse on feminism increasing at the moment, online and offline, what does the kitchen represent to you? And how has your thinking of women in the kitchen shifted over the years? And was there a specific point in your life where that changed for you? Before you explain, I'll just tell you mine. Mine was when I got married. I enjoyed being in the kitchen before I got married. Hated it when I got married, and it's something I've had to learn to enjoy. Actually, it's a process. So I'll let you explain that.
So before I got married, I saw my mum as the kind of culinary alchemist, the wizard, whatever you want to call her. She was a culinary queen. She was highly respected in the extended family. And although my mother wasn't educated, she is an incredibly intelligent woman. And in the kitchen space, my mum commanded it. And what I think now, when I put a feminist analysis on it, there are certain spaces where I saw mum very silent, quite timid in her personality, especially when the extended family would come round. But in the kitchen, she really came into her own. And actually, I was just having a conversation with my husband before the live now. And I said, how do you see the kitchen space for your mum? Because I said, your mum in some spaces is very quiet. His mum is an observer. And he goes, my mum oozes authority in the kitchen. She is the matriarch. She holds power in the kitchen. So for me, we hold identities as women, which are multifaceted, they're complex, but the kitchen takes on its own identity. And I look back at my mother-in-law's kitchen where I lived for 5 years. You know, when I go back to visit my mother-in-law, that kitchen has so many different identities and conversations. There were secrets that were told there. There were arguments maybe that were had there. There was laughter, there was joy, there was dancing if the Bhangra music was on. You know, there are so many different emotions. So a space takes on the identity of the people and the interactions that happen.
Yeah.
But also I've got memories of my mum late at night cooking when my dad would go to the pub and come back and bring his friends, and my mum would be making sabji at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And although my mum did it, and it doesn't, you know, I've got memories of almost my mum feeling quite oppressed, that why did my mum get up at 11 o'clock at night to make sabji for dad and his friends, which...
Yeah, my mum did the same thing, and she didn't enjoy that. She didn't enjoy having to be woken up out of bed, coming down and entertaining guests at silly o'clock. But they did that. They didn't really have a choice, unfortunately. And everything you've said there, Geeta, very, like I said, you made some really key points there. And that's why I wanted to ask you this question, because you explored the feminist narrative in your PhD, specifically, you know, Black and Asian feminist narrative. And I gave you my own personal story where, for me, I've had to learn to love the kitchen again. And now I love being in the kitchen. I'm in my kitchen right now, actually. And I love it. It is a place, like you said, where gossip takes place, and laughter, jokes, tales, you tell tales, confiding, all while you're cooking. But that shifted for me. So it shifted when I got married. Was that the same for you? Like you did say, your mother-in-law's home represents that for you. But I know you came into your own probably the same way I did when you had your own space and you're free to explore yourself.
Yeah, it's when I had my own kitchen, then I took on the role of the expert in the kitchen. And it's really liberating. It is liberating, and you kind of live in your mother-in-law's shadow when you're almost like the intern, you're the apprentice, because she's this wizard. And although we may think, you know, oh, the grandmothers are always in the kitchen, you know, they're oppressed, but they're not. They are experts. And when I came into my own house, I became the expert. And as my mother-in-law's health deteriorated, you know, I realized that people in the family were coming to me because I knew her recipes, because I'd lived there. So I held, I don't want to call it power in a way that's one directional, but I held that power.
The baton.
Yeah, I did. I held the baton during in that space. And, you know, if I think of maybe Annie's wedding, when we cooked everything at home for the home functions, it was really interesting to see 3, even 4 generations of women really huddled together in the kitchen space and in the garden, making mutri, making tea, adding their own twists and turns to it. It was chaos. But, you know, the kitchen the week before Annie's wedding had so many emotions. You know, I remember, you know, spilling a whole patila of tea and just bursting into tears and just sitting on the floor and crumbling to bits. I remember being happy when certain things came out well, and seeing like my mother-in-law and mum and my chachi and mummy in the kitchen. You know, they were happy times, and I knew they were rare times. And I thought, that is such a special time, because it's quite easy to just order in certain things when you have auspicious occasions. But it's lovely to learn that. And, you know, by me learning certain dishes from the grandmothers, and that's what I wanted on Annie's Grai ceremony, is when I had called the grandmothers, because they had to be the VIPs on the guest list. So when I invited them, you know, obviously I had another motive as well. I wanted to learn their culinary wisdom. So I said, please teach me. How do you make gorgle? How are you making the mutri? How are you making the burfi? I want to watch and learn from you.
I mean, it's interesting because the space, like you said, this is the kitchen was a space where they commanded authority. So it's not necessarily right to say that they were being oppressed, because they were not. Some women loved being in the kitchen. Some women love being in the kitchen now, and we associate a woman in the kitchen meaning she's oppressed. She is she is subordinate. That's not always true. So I'm glad you made that point, Geeta. Let's move on. We've got some questions here, which I can see that you're having a browse through. So let's try and answer some of these. I'm going to scroll up, read out the comments. Thank you guys for sharing. We've got Lorna, totally resonate with everything Geeta has said. Oh, so true, Geeta. Yes, Lorna says, we must make note of our elders' wisdom and recipes, otherwise they go with them once they're gone. I'm an old soul too. High five to that comment, Lorna.
Oh, yeah.
Kitchen is where, as we say in our home, all the duk-suk happens. Exactly. Priceless memories. Miss the old school cooking for celebrations. Everything was made at home. The nostalgia of food and memories. We've spoken about this all week, actually. And on Geeta's Educating Geeta page, which is separate to Dadimas, she's exploring the theme of food through writing. So there's a lot you can read there, how, you know, the kitchen holds those memories of these good times of celebrations. I did not enjoy being in the kitchen when I was with in-laws. We got a comment here. But after I bought my own house, it's my favorite room in the house now. It's my personal space to create flavors and dishes. I agree with you. That was the same with me. I love being, I'm sitting in here now because I love it. We also do kadai for a wedding in our family. So many great memories. I think the kadai ceremony is the most, that's the fun part, isn't it? Where everyone's coming together making
That
food.
That was probably my favourite function on Annie's wedding. And
it is.
The men and the women involved. So, you know, I had my father-in-law frying and helping to move things and wash fundit, going outside. I had my husband's nephews there. Everybody was involved.
It is, like I said, it's the best part for me. Got a comment here from Monica. Not a question, but wanted to send a huge hug to Geeta and Annie for their ongoing love and support during my times of joy and sorrow. So grateful to have inspirational women. I completely agree with you, Monica. I did make mention of that. You know, the fact that Geeta is such a cheerleader, and it's important to have that. And you know, when you mentioned earlier, Geeta, that you didn't really have that when you wanted to pursue education. Your dad made a comment saying, you know, find the right man. And I'm so glad that your husband was supportive of you. And that's what he said to you. You know, I like you, I'll marry you. Like, this is my vada to you. I promise that you can pursue that. I'm so glad that you did, because even my own mum, she wanted to pursue higher education. She wasn't allowed to, simply because of her gender, because she was a woman. She wanted to be a nurse.
It didn't come easy at all. And I'll write about that one day. You know, because I was juggling it with the childcare and full-time job. And I think that's probably why I'm an insomniac as well, because a lot of the time my studying was done into the early hours of the morning.
Yeah.
And there were often times where I would start the studying at 10 o'clock and then I'd be studying up until I saw the sunlight in the morning.
I think, Geeta, that your work ethic really, really shows. I mean, just to give you an example of, you just juggle so many different hats. You do it really well. We had a performance earlier in January before lockdown, and Geeta, you came to that. I really appreciate that. You know, you show up. You're not just someone who says things. You walk the walk. You know, you don't just talk the talk. So, and clearly, you know, we've got so many people messaging here saying how supportive you are of them as well. During lockdown has given me so much more time to make my own and try to remember how my mum made food. Yeah, that's actually something that I noticed on lockdown. People trying a lot of recipes. She passed away last year. I wish I took more notice. You think they are here forever. I've lost count of how many times I've messaged mum during lockdown to ask, how do I cook this? Sandeep, can't stay, but wanted to say I've never met Geeta, but from her messages and support on Instagram, she's a lovely soul and seems very sincere. Kudos to your work, Geeta. Well, there you go. All these comments are testament to your character, Geeta. And really? I wanted to ask, so feel free to ask questions. We've got another 5 more minutes, but I thought I'll ask you a question, Geeta. So you launched Educating Geeta, I think last year, and just before lockdown, as I mentioned, you set up a writing group, and we've explored different themes. I'm part of that writing group. We've explored themes of food, love, and then the lockdown. So, you know, what was the motivation behind that, and what can we expect from that?
Okay. So I am struggling to manage, I must say, the page. So if it's a bit dull at the moment, I'm sorry about that. But basically, I know and appreciate how difficult it is for not only women of colour, but for men of colour to get their writing out there. And I didn't want to have a page which was just about all of my writing, because as an academic, I see myself as in a privileged position today. It's been a very difficult space to get into, and that's a different discussion. But I want to support others who are budding writers. And one of the things that I found is there are so many talented female and male writers out there which don't have a space or don't have the confidence to share. But it has sparked my own interest, starting educating Geeta. I mean, because I'm learning through other young women like you, and mainly the writing group is younger women. So I seem to be attracting a lot of women in their 30s. I have asked a few women why, and they've just said, well, if anything, we feel less threatened by you. We don't feel judged.
I agree with you.
And now I'm kind of developing my own book idea, and I'll keep you posted if anything happens on that. So I'm looking to take the doctorate forward, looking at perspectives on being and becoming successful as a South Asian woman. But I'm interested in the mess of the journey. What does it take to get there? And what advice have women got for others? But, you know, putting an academic analysis on it. So, but it's looking at success across the generations. And so looking at it from teenage girls right up to grandmothers like Abby's grandmother.
Yeah, of course, that will vary, because for my mom, when I've asked her, Mom, do you think you're successful? Often she has said no to that answer, which really breaks my heart. But sometimes she thinks about it and she says, yeah, because I've got all of you educated and 3 of you are married. That's her notion of success.
Exactly, Nori. And that's what my mum says. And I asked her recently, and I said, Mum, do you think you're successful? Oh, but my business is closing down. But I said, Mum, you've made a successful business in 31 years.
Exactly.
But her happiness and success is measured through her children. So it's not through the lens or the body of herself. It is through the other. And it's through her children.
Yeah, because now when I speak to people my age who've got kids, they will not say, more often than not, they will not say that their children are their success. They will feel that, yes, I'm obviously grateful to be a mother and have these kids, and they fill my life with joy, but I feel that opportunities have been snatched from me. This is the narrative I'm hearing. I don't know about you, but I'm hearing the success, obviously it varies, a very subjective thing, but I find it fascinating that for my mom and a lot of people of her generation, it's in the success is placed in the other, because I was not able to pursue my dreams. I lived my dreams and life through the other, through my child, right? So fascinating. We could talk about this for a long time, I'm sure.
We could. We'll have to have it as a writing theme.
You know, yes, let's definitely do that. And as I said, Educating Geeta, please do check out that page. So Dadimas, obviously, this is the what we've been discussing, but Educating Geeta is specifically, it's a little bit more niche, I would say. Men in my family like to cook a barbecue. They are proud to cook in the garden, but cannot be bothered to cook in the kitchen normally. What are your thoughts on this, Geeta? If you've got 1 minute.
I've got a lot of thoughts on this. There are a couple of men actually who have messaged me to say, would I like to feature them for some of their barbecue recipes? And one is actually my brother-in-law. So whoever it is, they can contact me, and I would love to feature grandfathers who are doing barbecues, as long as they do the cleaning up as well. And the chopping.
Good that you said that. I like that that you put that out there. But yeah, I agree with this. Men, they feel that authority and that they feel pride in owning the barbecue and wearing their apron. But when you come into the space of the kitchen, no, don't want to enter that territory. Something we can definitely explore another time. Like I said, I'm conscious of the time and I don't want this to come off. But Geeta, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for your comments and your feedback. Please do follow Educating Geeta to find out more information about the writing group, which I'm part of and I love. It's a great community. And check out Dadimas and the grand actions on there and keep up to date with everything that you know.
And thank you, Nuri. I just want to say how privileged I feel to know somebody like you through Dadimas, and I really commend what you're doing within this series and everything else that you do. You know, the two of you as sisters have got a heart of gold and kindness, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you, and I feel the same about you. The timer has appeared. It's telling me I've got 30 seconds.
Okay, all right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Check out Dadimas and Educating Geeta. I'll put the links on my Instagram after this, and I will save this IGTV, so please do come back to it. And yes, thank you for being part of this series. Good night.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.